This video will talk about the inequality notation and how to graph an inequality. Now, your inequality can be written in different ways. First, you can write it this way, which you call the inequality notation, or you can write it this way, which you call the interval notation. Now, in this video, we will only focus on the inequality notation. Now, another very important concept that you should also know, because we will encounter this in the example, is the types of inequalities. Now, we have two kinds of inequalities. We have the simple inequalities and we have the compound inequalities. Now, the main difference is that for simple inequalities, you will only see one inequality symbol. So just like this, just a simple inequality. Simple inequality, you'll see only one inequality symbol. Now, when you combine these two inequalities, two simple inequalities, they make the compound inequality. So like sometimes you can use the connector or. So we have this simple and then another simple connected by or. So that's a compound inequality. Sometimes they can be combined using the connector and. So you have one simple, another simple combined with the connector and you call it the compound inequality. Or sometimes a compound inequality will look like this. So you can see in here, you have two inequality symbols, and then the variable x is found in the middle. That's also a compound inequality. So bear in mind, we will encounter later simple and compound inequalities in the examples. All right, now another very important thing that you should bear in mind when you graph an inequality is this. So whenever you use these symbols here, less than, greater than, or not equal to, on the graph, you should have to use the open circle. All right, now if you use the symbol less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, on the graph, you should use a solid circle. All right, so take note of this. We will use this when we graph an inequality. Let's now go to an example. All right, first example, we have here x is less than 4, and we will show the graph. Now remember, this is in this symbol here that's equivalent to an open circle. So we just put open circle at 4. So this is 4. We have open circle here. And then see this inequality, the pointed part is to the left side. It points to the left. So therefore, we just need to make a line array pointing to the left also. So that's the graph of this inequality. Now let's take a look at another example. So we have here x is less than or equal to -1. So we just need to go to this number, -1 here. And then remember this symbol, less than or equal to, that's a solid circle, right? Solid circle at -1. So I'll just put here a solid circle at -1. Now the inequality is pointing to the left. The pointed part is to the left. So we just need to make a ray to your left side. So that's the graph of that inequality. All right, let's take a look at our third example. So we have here -2 is less than x. Now, if you notice that for this example, our variable is on the right. And in the previous two examples, if you will notice, the variable is always in the left. Now, we have to make sure that the variable is in the left before we graph this inequality. So what we can do here is we can switch the left and right side, but at the same time, we also switch the direction here. So it goes to the other direction. So from here, it becomes switch the left and right side. So you have x and -2. And then you have to switch also the direction of this inequality. So it becomes this way. So it becomes a greater than. And now our variable is in the left side. So we can now graph. We have here -2. And this symbol means open. So open at -2. And then look, the pointed part is to the right. So our direction is to the right. So make a ray all the way to the right. And that's the graph of this inequality. All right, the first three examples that we have are simple inequalities. Now, our fourth example is a compound inequality. And remember, compound inequality, one of them is a compound inequality that makes use of the or, all right? Now, if you have an or compound inequality, and all you have to do is graph the two simple inequalities you have in one number line. All right, so let's begin with here. So we have here a closed circle for this symbol at -2. I mean, open circle, sorry. Open circle at -2. And then see, it's pointing to the left, so we make a ray to the left. That's for this. And then here we have, this one is for closed circle at +1. And it points to the right, so we point it to the right. So we just graph two simple inequalities in one number line if we have an or compound inequality. So our next example is another compound inequality that makes use of the connector and. Now, an and inequality means you're looking at the intersection of the graphs, or In other words, you're looking at the common part between these two graphs. And we need to see the common part before and then that common part is the final graph. All right. So I'll just make a scratch graph here at the bottom. So let's see, we'll see the common part. So for this one, I have a closed at 4, at -4, I mean, close at -4 and all the way to the right side. And for this, another inequality, we have open at 2, and all the way to the left. All right, so you first graph each inequality, and look, we need to find the common part of this graph. And I see that the common part between the two graphs, it starts from here all the way to here. All right, so it means that our final graph, the graph of this, because this is just a scratch, the final graph will be closed at -4, and then all the way to a +2 and open at +2. Okay, so that's our final graph, and we need to erase this part here. All right, so I should only see this graph in your final graph. Okay, so that's how you graph an end inequality. Our next example is another kind of a compound inequality. Yes, because we have two inequalities here. I call this compound inequality as the segment type inequality, right? So if you see an inequality that looks like this, so see there's a variable in the middle, and then the two inequality symbols, and then the numbers on the left and right. I call it the segment type inequality. And this is how you graph this kind of inequality if it's look like this. So all you have to do, on your left side, you have a -3, and this symbol is a closed circle. So closed, I'll just put a closed circle at -3. That's on my left. And on my right side is another closed at +5. So closed at +5. And then remember, it's a segment type. So I just connect the two endpoints, and that's the segment, and that's the graph. So just make sure you have this, it's written in this way, and so the graph will look like a segment, just like this. For our final example, we have this simple inequality. We have x is not equal to -1. So if you have the not equal inequality, this is how you graph it. Just go to -1, that number there, and you know not equal is an open circle. So I do open circle, make open circle at -1. And then for the not equal, you just make array to both sides, to both directions, left and right. All right, and that's the graph for this inequality. To both sides. Make raise to both sides.